Andrew Czysz Jr. presents a Carthage College sports media project incorporating its esports program and Rocket League team. Welcome to the Carthage Esports Rocket and Roll Birds podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on back to the Carthage Esports Rocket and Roll Birds podcast. My name is Andrew Czysz Jr., lead broadcaster for Carthage Esports, bringing you the final episode of our mini-series of the overview of Carthage Esports before we get into the regular season recap for Carthage Rocket League Red from spring 2025, as well as the 3 one-on-one player interviews with Alexander Vale, Armando Hernandez, and Penn Gilchrist. In episode 4, we will be talking about the career opportunities and future of Carthage Esports. So to begin with academic and career opportunities, a question that we get is, are there esports related courses or academic programs at Carthage College for esports specifically? So yes, there is, for a short answer. And you may be asking yourself, well, Andrew, what classes are available? I'm glad you asked. So in the 10-week Sports Management Master's program, there is a dedicated esports class called MGT 5260. That is the code for it. It thoroughly introduces students to the business model framework in application of the esports industry. In an ever-adapting industry, students learn the concepts of business model development and critique to be adaptive thinkers and agile learners, and how to seek and create new value generation. So this is extremely important for esports in particular because it's such a niche subject to discuss. I mean, Carthage didn't have esports at all until 2021. That's when it was founded. Their first season wasn't until the spring of 2022, so this is still very new here. And the fact that esports gets an actual class in the master's program, I believe our director of esports, Robert Ziong, actually, I believe he teaches that class. I think so, yes. He told me last year that he taught the class, so that was awesome to hear from his perspective. And, he comes from Lakeland. He was an esports intern there as well, so he's got that, leadership quality to him. And he's a great director, and I'm glad to have him at Carthage. He's made my experience worthwhile. So it's awesome that he teaches that class, and it's awesome to have the class because you can market esports in so many different ways. The possibilities are quite literally endless just because of how new this thing is. There's the aspect of social media that will affect this as well with promotion and stuff like that. And the opportunities that just spring from it are, exponential. And as we discussed in episode 3, where we were talking about the esports facility resources as well as the student involvement in the community. And that kind of ties into this episode as well, where esports allows students to gain so many different soft skills, professional communication. If they want to be more of like the journalistic type, how to use certain softwares, how to, properly write blogs and stuff like that, how to communicate with people on a professional level, things of that nature. So esports really opens those doors, and it's really beneficial. And the fact that it's in a sports management master's program is huge. And I've heard nothing about, that class being, quote unquote boring. So that's a great takeaway. And it's a very useful class, even if the student isn't going to be in the esports field. It's nice to have a well-rounded perspective. Carthage College is a liberal arts college, so you kind of get a little bit of everything here, but it's one of the best things that Carthage offers. It's why Carthage is Carthage, and that's why I love it here so much. Continuing on, Carthage offers actual game development programs with courses, such as game development 1, 2, and 3, as well as opportunities to consult with the varsity esports team and participate in summer research experiences. So that's really cool. Game development 1 in particular introduces students to the game development and design process, focusing on building games in various genres. So, just like it says, pretty self explanatory. It introduces students to actual core concepts of game development because you can't just go right into the advanced stuff. You got to learn about the nuts and bolts of the whole operation before you get to the meat and potatoes per se. And that's what game development one is. And it teaches you about the design process. Now, me personally, I don't know anything about developing games, but it sounds very interesting. So, but yeah, it just focuses on building the games in various genres. So I'm assuming it goes after, maybe, something like a shooting game or something like a role playing game, something with action and adventure, stuff like that. Like, how does the process work to fit those different genres? Because game developers are some of the most talented people on the planet. They have creative minds. It's just that sometimes they are a part of organizations that are deemed greedy and ones that, haven't really made quality video games that much anymore. If, you're an older person watching this from, a different generation and, you grew up with maybe the NES or the SNES or the Atari or, something like the Sega Saturn, Dreamcast, maybe the GameCube, the original Xbox, the Nintendo, Xbox, Sega, they all were making great games. PlayStation as well. You get the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2. All these companies were making great games at one point, and that's what made them stand out between each other is their ability to sort of market it in a way that was fun, and the games themselves were actually fun. But nowadays in the gaming industry, things are sort of mundane and kind of, dry and all a part of a live service thing that was started through a game like Fortnite, for example. Like came out in 2017, introduced a battle pass format, and ever since then the games have sort of just like fluctuated from trying to follow that format and trying to recreate something that the game that's following it is not. A prime example is something like Call of Duty nowadays, where it used to be fun back in the day, but they've sort of resorted to this live service battle pass format. But the point I'm trying to make here is game developers have the most creative minds. Sometimes they're just undermined by the organizations they work for. But if you can find a great position at an indie game studio, for example, who makes smaller games that are actually interesting and enjoyable. Like right now on my Xbox, I'm currently playing through South of Midnight, which is a game tailored to the deep roots of the Deep South, where you play as a character Hazel who lost her mother in a hurricane, and she finds that she has the power to weave things back to normal, and she goes in sort of this like parasocial relationship within herself with these weaves, and she can see ghosts from the past, and she can uncover secrets of the past. So kind of designs and storytelling like that is really cool, as well as like art styles as well. So that's just one example of a game that is a unique genre of game and unique art style, stuff like that. So we need more of that in today's world. And I think if students that take this at Carthage, they come up with these creative minds, they can do something special in the gaming industry. Moving on for game development 2, this continues with CSC 2710, and it emphasizes 3-dimensional environments. So this is a step above from game development 1, where you're sort of learning about the ins and outs when it comes to game development and design, and focusing to build those games for various genres. And these days, most games are 3-dimensional. That's just the common norm these days. Sometimes there is 2D platformers that still come out, but mostly it is just 3D all the way around, especially for role-playing games these days, except if there's like a classic game that does that, but usually they are resorted to 3-dimensional environments. Game development 3 builds upon CSC 2720, and it focuses on advanced topics like save systems and multiplayer. So Obviously, in some games like those live service games that I was talking about, they have a big emphasis on multiplayer, so you got to make sure that's good. And also for single player games such as, Mario, Metroid, trying to think of ones on top of my head. There's a billion of them coming at me at once, but just stuff like that where there's a single player campaign and need to have certain spaces to, save your game to make sure you don't lose progress. Now, sometimes you have to manually save it yourself. Other times there are autosave features that are in the works for games nowadays, and they work most of the time, and I never see a problem with those. So, yeah, save systems are very important because I know back in the day, maybe there wasn't an efficient save system at all. You just kind of had to just play through a level and you couldn't save your progress, and that was that. But these days, save systems are sort of built into the games where they can track your progress. If there's like a certain checkpoint in a chapter for a story, for example, if you're playing something like Life is Strange, they will, have a save system where, if you go through one chapter, you complete it, it'll auto save it, and then you can just go right back into the next chapter of the game. And that works for other games too that are like that single player style where, hey, you beat this objective in this chapter. Do you want to save here? And you're able to save there and sort of just continue on your merry way and pick up where you left off later on. So that's another cool thing about video games is, the save system is very useful. And also multiplayer for those live service games that I was talking about before that require online connection and smooth and fluent gameplay to satisfy the consumer. And other related courses include computer science 1 and 2, and in these classes, as far as my knowledge goes, you are able to learn a lot of things about coding and things of that nature, and that ties into video games because more often than not, video game development does involve some coding, so that's very useful for that sort of career path if a student wanted to go through that career path. So it is nice to know that Carthage does offer things like that for the students. So if anybody watching this knows that, a relative or somebody is interested in doing game development and stuff like that, send them on over to Carthage College because we have a, great program that tailors that game development. Can also work with our esports teams, and they can also take some computer science on the side to sort of weave in that coding aspect of their flow. So for career paths, what can esports open up in that department? Whether it be streaming, game development, coaching, marketing, etc. To answer this question, esports has the versatility to open up several career paths, including broadcasting, coaching, directing, game development, marketing, photography, social media management, etc. So esports can open up all of these possibilities because, like I expressed in episode 3, there's a lot of soft skills to be desired here. If someone wants to be in broadcasting, they're going to have to know how to communicate with an audience on camera. They're going to have to know how to work with a color commentator, or a play-by-play, regardless of where they are at the table, what their role is. They're going to need to learn how to work with a stream producer to coordinate a plan of action with, what they want to say on the broadcast and stuff like that, and what the producer needs from them as the broadcast is going on, not being too interrupted when the producer talks in their ear, stuff like that. No, I still have trouble dealing with that, but usually it's just for a friendly comment or something about a play or something that happened in the match. But when it's real urgent, I'm able to sort of just listen to them as well as cast as well, and if it's really important, I know when to stop casting and just listen to what the producer's saying and communicate that right away with the audience. The broadcaster will also develop qualitative and quantitative skills, especially if they decide to take notes like I do on the teams before broadcasts. I find that very helpful because A, you are informed yourself, and B, you have more information to sprinkle onto the audience as the broadcast goes along. So it kind of relates to baseball. Funny enough, I am broadcasting baseball for Carthage as I'm doing this podcast. And, you know, it's all about filling the dead airtime for baseball, having enough information for esports. Yes, it's faster, but in those intermission points for a game like Smash Bros, you want to make sure you have information to display to the audience. And, sometimes when you have dispersed all the information possible, you kind of go on to a little bit of friendly talks that are related to what you're broadcasting. For example, I know myself and my co-commentator for Smash, we decided to talk about Nintendo topics, in the middle of battles because that related to what we were broadcasting because it was Nintendo. Obviously, Nintendo and Bandai Namco developed Smash Bros, so that kind of works out that way. But it's just sort of that interpersonal connection that you could also have with your co-caster that's also great. And again, it just opens up opportunities in that realm to sort of just have a feel for what broadcasting is in the real world. And for a guy like me, I'm always trying to translate that into the traditional sports world. Other avenues such as coaching and directing that comes with seeing people in leadership roles. I mean, if you're an esports arena worker like we discussed in episode 3, you are in a leadership position, so that kind of is that comes with that experience. And if you're maybe a broadcaster, for example, and you observe a lot of things about the program and you're very knowledgeable of what's going on, you're not really a coach or director behind the scenes, you're that broadcaster who is really keened into what's going on. And later down the line with that experience, you could end up becoming a coach and a director. Game development can be opened up thanks to the program Carthage has, as well as linking with the esports team for summer research projects, marketing and photography, social media management. Those all happen because we have positions that are in need at Carthage Esports, when that time comes. And these individuals get great experience with, marketing our program, photographing, memories such as a championship victory and promoting it on social media, getting the attention of various viewers online to help raise engagement from fans in our program is really beneficial as well. So it's sort of like just being personalized with our audience, sort of like what I'm learning in sports media right now, with how social media affects different sporting organizations and esports in general as well. Even though it's not really covered in the sports media subject, but still, esports can be directly applied because, as I said, it works pretty much like a traditional sport. The only difference is the players are playing a virtual video game and not actually competing on a field with like a real football, a soccer ball, stuff like that. So, but yeah, one success story from Carthage students involving esports. One of them, you could bring up myself, you can bring up other people as well in the space. But one success story does come from myself. While attending Horlick High School, I was recruited by then director of esports at Carthage, Kevin Palmer, about joining their program for broadcasting. This was back in August of 2022. That was when I took my first tour of Carthage. It was August 20th, 2022. Never forget that day. Before those conversations were had, I was appointed as the lead broadcaster for the Wisconsin High School Esports Association, WSIA, which governs and supports the growth of esports through 100 plus high schools in the area. My success has brought me over to Carthage. I went there because the campus is beautiful and all of the people I work with in the esports program are both fun and outgoing. Since joining in fall 2023, I have helped broadcast 47 total esports matches for Carthage, and that spans from all the way from fall 2023 to now in spring 2025. So basically 2 complete years across multiple esports titles. I have seen our Overwatch team win an NECC Midwest Championship. That was on December 3rd, 2023. We talked about that in episode 2. And I've seen our Smash and Rocket League teams compete with Heart. I have helped reinforce the previously established culture here, as I expressed in earlier episodes. The impact has allowed our program to also win back-to-back Wisconsin Broadcaster Association awards for Best Sports Play-by-Play in 2024 and 2025. Now, I know that, that's a part of my story. However, I humbly accept those, and that is also a part of Carthage Esports' story, because without my co-casters, Subby and Blaze, I would not be able to have won those awards. So hats off to both of them for their incredible work for the Carthage Esports program as well. And, they're able to work with me quite well. I've known Blaze since kindergarten, so about 13, 14 years now. So me and him have it deep. And he's the guy who got me involved with esports broadcasting in the first place. So I owe him everything. And, he's always been a great role model for me as I've been, getting more developed in my career and stuff like that. So I can't thank him enough. And for the program to have 2 back-to-back play-by-play sports awards is amazing from the Wisconsin Broadcasters Association, because they've never seen esports prior to the first submission I had, which was that Overwatch 2 submission, which we got 3rd place in 2024, followed up by the Smash Bros. One in 2025. So Kyle Giesler, the director at the Wisconsin Broadcasters Association, was blown away by the esports commentary, and he loves it, and the staff loves it as well. So it's an honor to say that Carthage Esports got 3rd place in back-to-back years in a sports play-by-play college TV category. Yes, traditional sports and esports clip, a 10-minute esports clip, got back-to-back awards from 2 different game titles, Overwatch 2 and Smash Bros. So that is a accolade that I will cling on to for the rest of my career, and that's an accolade that makes Carthage look even more better. And lastly, we're sure to just talk about the future of esports at Carthage. So for opportunities for partnerships or scholarships, Carthage has had the opportunity to partner with Spectrum Furniture to ensure the lounging space is high quality. We more recently have partnered with Influxer, which is an officially licensed vendor to allow student athletes to create personalized and co-branded merchandise for their fans. This was put in place, I believe, last fall, so very new. And Carthage happens to be the only varsity sport to directly offer recruits with a scholarship, regardless if they are being recruited for playing competitively or for something media related. As I prefaced earlier, I was recruited to Carthage by virtue of a esports scholarship for broadcasting, so you can have that as a player and as a broadcaster. And that opens up the future doors for Carthage Esports in terms of, how they're able to recruit certain players and stuff like that. And also how they recruit broadcast talent. And, the future opens the doors to Carthage getting, high quality students that are ready to, go to work here for the esports program. They're ready to learn how to do broadcasting, how to do social media marketing, stuff like that, how to learn the ins and outs of playing on a competitive varsity team, things of that nature. So again, opens a lot of doors. And last thing we'll talk about is how is the program evolving? So Carthage Esports continuously evolves as time goes on. In an industry where things are constantly changing, we aim to stay the course and provide the best experiences for all students, no matter how competitive they are in video games. There are more opportunities opening up for graduates after being a part of this program. We are usually looking to expand game title offerings if they are offered within leagues we participate in. Things of that nature would be, the new hit hero shooter Marvel Rivals, for example. We're trying to see if that's going to be implemented into the National Esports Collegiate Conference or the Wisconsin Esports Conference, and see if we can fit that in our rotation. Hasn't been confirmed to be a title in either of those esports organizations, but it's definitely one to look out for the future. As our program evolves, we will always choose to foster an inclusive environment where everyone is welcome to participate in the program, no matter if you are a competitive player, casual player, or someone who wants to be involved within our media teams. So again, the overall message is the same, but we're willing to adapt when needed in this ever-evolving environment of esports. But yeah, that'll basically do it for episode 4 of the Carthage Esports Rocket and Roll Birds podcast. That covers everything for our 4-episode overview of the program. Next, we'll be getting into the one-on-one player interviews between Alex Vale, Armando Hernandez, and Penn Gilchrist. And also talk about the Carthage Rocket League season recap. So those are the last 4 episodes. These first 4 episodes were sort of a preface to get everybody's gears going about the Carthage Esports program. And I will be centralizing it a little bit more to talk about the recent Carthage Rocket League Red Spring 2025 season. So with that being said, don't forget to rocket and roll birds.